One second Hana is pulling weeds in the garden, the next she is on the ground. And as Alice watches the gardener catch her, steady, unsurprised, like some part of him has been waiting for this, she realizes two things at once. One, she is already in too deep to walk away. And two, he has been keeping a secret. Welcome to Afro-Soul Stories, Soulmates. Please like, share, and subscribe. Alice Kingsley is 26 years old. She runs a real estate company she built from nothing at 22, and she runs it well. Her office is in the West Loop, her team is small and sharp, and her house on the north side of Chicago sits behind a black iron gate with a garden in the back that wraps around the property like something breathing. She bought it 4 years ago, and she has never once taken it for granted. She lives alone. She likes it that way. Or she has gotten used to it, which is close enough. It is 6:45 on a Tuesday morning in late April. Alice is at her kitchen counter, laptop open, coffee going cold beside her. She is halfway through her third email when she looks up. There is a little girl standing in her garden. She sets her mug down slowly. The girl is small, 6, maybe 7, in a yellow dress printed with white daisies, white sneakers, 2 neat braided pigtails. She is standing very still on the garden path with her face tipped up toward the row of sunflowers along the east wall. Pure, unguarded wonder on her face. The kind that hasn't learned to be embarrassed about itself yet. Yoon Min-jun is crouched 10 feet away turning soil near the rose beds like absolutely nothing is happening. Alice is already moving. She comes through the back door, and Min-jun looks up before she is halfway across the garden. He straightens. He looks at her with the stillness of someone who knew this moment was coming and decided to meet it standing up. "Who is this?" Alice says. "My sister," he says. "Hana." The little girl turns around. Large dark eyes. Completely unafraid. "Hello," Hana says. Alice looks at her. Then back at Min-jun. "You brought a child to my property without asking me." "Yes," he says. "That is not acceptable. I'm sorry. Her school has a staff day. I had no one to leave her with, and I couldn't cancel on short notice. I should have called ahead." "Yes," Alice says. "You should have." She looks at Hana again. The little girl has already turned back to the sunflowers. She reaches out one small finger and touches the edge of a petal. Gently, like it might feel something. Something moves in Alice's chest that she does not have a name for and does not want to examine. She stays outside, Alice says. She doesn't come in. She doesn't touch anything she's not supposed to. "Understood," Min-jun says. "And this doesn't happen again without permission." "It won't." Alice goes back inside. She sits at her counter and reads the same email 3 times without absorbing a single word. Outside, she can hear Hana say something in a small voice. She hears Min-jun respond, low and patient. Then quiet. She does not look out the window. She looks out the window. Hana is sitting cross-legged on the garden path with a small yellow flower in her lap, studying it like it is the most important object in the world. Min-jun is working nearby. He glances at her every few minutes. Just a glance. Just checking. The way you look after something you are responsible for without making a production of it. Alice closes her laptop. The next time Hana comes is 2 weeks later. Alice hears the gate code at 7:15 and looks out of habit, and there she is, a coral dress this time. Same white sneakers, same pigtails, a small backpack on her shoulders. Alice does not go outside. By 9, she needs more coffee, and through the kitchen window, Hana is sitting on the low garden bench with a book open in her lap, reading with the serious concentration of someone much older. Min-jun is planting near the far wall. Alice makes her coffee. She goes outside. She tells herself it is because she needs to check the east-facing beds. Hana looks up the moment she hears the door. "Good morning," the girl says. "Good morning," Alice says. "Your garden is very big." "It is." "Do you like gardens?" Alice pauses. Such a direct question. No preamble, no shyness, just straight there. "I appreciate it," Alice says finally. Hana considers this like it requires real processing. "That's different from liking it," she says. "Yes," Alice says. "It is." Min-jun appears from behind the rose beds. He looks at Alice, then at Hana, then back at Alice, waiting to see if she needs him to step in. She doesn't signal anything. She just takes her coffee back inside. But she leaves the back door slightly open. By June, Hana is coming every Tuesday and Thursday. Alice has not formally agreed to this. It has simply become true, the way certain things become true, gradually. Without a single moment you can point to and say that is when I decided. One Thursday, Hana arrives with a small container wrapped in a cloth. Min-jun made kimbap, she says, holding it out the moment Alice opens the back door. He made extra. Alice looks at the container. He said you probably don't take a lunch break, Hana adds. Very matter of fact. Alice takes it. She opens it at the kitchen counter. Small neat rolls of rice and vegetables wrapped in seaweed, cut clean. She eats one. Simple and careful and good. Is it okay? Hana asks, watching from the stool she has climbed onto without being invited. It's good, Alice says. Hana grins, big and unrestrained, and completely taking over her whole face. I'll tell him. He'll pretend he doesn't care, but he will care. Alice glances out the window. Min-jun is on the far side of the garden, carefully not looking toward the house. Does he care about things often? Alice asks. About most things, Hana says. He just doesn't say it out loud. She swings her feet against the stool legs. He's always been like that. Quiet outside, busy inside. How long have you known him? Alice asks. Hana tilts her head. Always, she says simply. The complete certainty of a child who has never had reason to question it. Alice eats another kimbap and does not ask anything more. It is a Sunday in July when Hana first brings Korean food inside. Alice hears the gate, and 10 minutes later there is a small knock at the back door. She opens it. Hana is standing on the step holding a container with both hands and the expression of someone delivering something of great importance. Min-jun made tteokbokki, she announces. He said it's too spicy for me, so I can't have any. But he made too much. Alice looks at the container. Then past Hana at Min-jun, who is by the garden wall doing something that requires his complete and total attention apparently. He sent you to knock? Alice says. Hana's expression shifts by a fraction. He didn't say I couldn't. Alice takes the container. Come in, she says. Hana climbs onto the kitchen stool. Alice opens the container at the counter. The smell hits her immediately, spicy and deep and warm, the kind of smell that belongs in a kitchen full of people. She tries a piece. The heat builds slowly, and then it is everything. Rich and sweet underneath the fire, the rice cakes soft and dense. Good? Hana asks, chin in her hands, watching Alice's face closely. Very good, Alice says. Hana kicks her feet with satisfaction. He makes it different every time. Sometimes fish cake, sometimes boiled egg. She leans on her elbows. He learned from our grandma. She used to cook with him when he was small. Alice eats another piece. She taught him well. She taught him everything, Hana says. The easy ownership of a child claiming a history she was told about so many times it became hers too. He says she had this one pot she used for everything. He still has it. Alice looks at her. You never met her? No, Hana says simply. She died before I came. But Min-jun talks about her sometimes when he's cooking. So I know her. She says it like that is completely enough. Like knowing someone through the person who loved them is the same as knowing them yourself. Alice is quiet for a moment. Next time he should make japchae, Hana says, brightening. The clear noodles with vegetables. It's my favorite. I think you would like it. Why? Hana considers this seriously. Because it's not loud, she says. It's just good. Quietly good. She looks at Alice. You like things that are quietly good, I think. Alice looks at this child who has just described her in 8 words more accurately than most people manage in years. Go tell him thank you for the food, Alice says. Hana slides off the stool. But at the back door she stops and turns. Alice, she says. She started using her first name 2 weeks ago without asking. Alice found she did not mind. Why is your house so quiet? The question lands softly. Pure honest curiosity. No agenda behind it. Because I like it that way, Alice says. Hana looks at her for a moment. I think, she says carefully, with the gravity of someone working something out in real time, that sometimes quiet is nice and sometimes quiet is just alone. She pauses. But I'm only 7. I don't know everything. She goes back outside. Alice stands at her kitchen counter for a long time after. September comes and brings the first cool edges to the Chicago air. The garden shifts, the sunflowers beginning to bow, the roses giving their last blooms, the oak trees at the front starting to turn at their edges. Alice starts having her morning coffee outside. She tells herself it is because September in Chicago is brief and worth having. She does not examine the other reason. Most mornings Min-jun is already there when she comes out. They have developed a rhythm that neither of them named. She brings 2 coffees. He takes one without comment. They sit on opposite ends of the bench, or she stands near the beds while he works and they talk, or they don't talk, and both are equally fine. It is a September evening when Min-jun tells her about Hana. Alice has come outside to lock up the garden shed and found him still there, sitting on the low wall near the back beds, jacket on against the cooling air. Hana is inside. She has a key to the back door now, which Alice gave her one afternoon without ceremony, sliding it across the kitchen counter while Hana was mid-sentence about something else. Hana had stopped talking, looked at the key, looked at Alice, and then continued her sentence like nothing had happened. But she had closed her hand around it very tightly. Alice sits on the bench. The garden is golden in the evening light. Neither of them speaks for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" Alice says. "Yes," he says. Hana said she's always known you. But the way she said it, always, it didn't sound like a whole lifetime. Min-jun is quiet. He looks at his hands for a moment, then out at the garden. "Her mother lived in the apartment next to mine," he says. "In Bridgeport. 5 years ago." He says it evenly, the way he says most things, not performing the weight of it, not running from it either. "She would leave Hana with me. An hour, she'd say. 2 hours. Come back tonight. Come back tomorrow." He pauses. Hana was almost 2, old enough to walk, but not old enough to understand why the person who was supposed to come back kept not coming back. Alice is very still. "One day she just didn't come back at all," he says. "No call. No note. Just gone." He exhales slowly. "I waited 2 weeks. I kept thinking she would. And then I stopped waiting." "And you kept Hana," Alice says. "What was I supposed to do?" he says. Not a question. Just the simple truth of a person who made a decision and has never once second-guessed it. "Does Hana know?" Alice says quietly. "No," he says. "She was too young to remember. She doesn't ask. As far as she knows, I am just hers, and she is mine." He looks at Alice. "One day when she is older, I will tell her everything. But not yet. Right now she just needs to be a child." Alice looks at the garden. The last of the evening light catching the top of the sunflowers. "You were alone before her," Alice says. "Yes," he says. "How long?" He is quiet for a moment. "Since I was 13, he says. "My grandmother died. After that it was the system. Group homes mostly. Nothing consistent." He says it the way you say things you have made peace with a long time ago. "I learned early that the only person you can rely on is yourself." Alice looks at him. "And then Hana came. And then Hana came," he says. The small warmth in his voice that only ever appears when he talks about her. "And I thought, I know what it feels like to be that child. The one nobody came back for. I wasn't going to be another person who didn't come back." The garden is quiet around them. A car passes somewhere beyond the gate, and then it is quiet again. "I had someone," Alice says. She doesn't plan to say it. It comes from the same place all honest things come from when the moment is right and the person beside you has just handed you something real. "For 2 years, she says. "I thought he was the most real thing in my life. I trusted him with everything. My plans, my fears, where the company was going, what I was building." Her hands are folded in her lap. "He was using me the entire time. Feeding information to a competitor. Getting close to me deliberately because I was useful to him." She says it flat and even, the way you say things you have already grieved. "When I found out, I couldn't understand how I had been so wrong. How I had looked at someone every day and not seen what was actually there." Min-jun is listening. He is not filling the space. He is just there. "So I stopped letting people in," she says. "I told myself I liked it that way." "Did you?" he says. A pause. "No," she says. "I just got used to it." Silence settles between them. Not uncomfortable. The kind that comes after 2 people have said true things, and the air has accepted them. "He took something from you that wasn't yours to lose," Min-jun says quietly. "The ability to trust your own eyes. That was his fault, not yours." Alice holds his gaze. Something in her chest shifts, not dramatically, not loudly. Just a slow, careful movement like a window painted shut being worked gently loose. She looks away first. "It's getting cold," she says. "Yes," he says. They go inside. Hana is at the kitchen counter with her homework, and she looks up when they come in and looks between them with her sharp 7-year-old eyes and says absolutely nothing, which from Hana is the loudest possible comment. Min-jun makes tea. Alice sits at the table near Hana and opens her laptop and does not look at him standing at her stove. She looks at him anyway. October arrives, and the garden deepens into its autumn colors. The three of them have fallen into a life together that nobody designed. Thursday evenings, Min Jun stays for dinner sometimes. It started once, then again, and now it is simply what Thursdays are. Alice cooks, or he cooks, or Hana supervises both of them from the counter with strong opinions about everything. One Thursday evening she is at the stove, and he comes to stand beside her to check something in the other pan, and he is very close. Close enough that she can feel the warmth of him, and neither of them moves away. They stand there for a moment, both looking at the stove, and then Hana says loudly from the counter, "It's going to burn." And the moment breaks, and they both move, and Hana looks extremely pleased with herself. Later, after Hana is asleep on the sofa with a blanket pulled over her, Min Jun and Alice sit at the kitchen table with tea going cold between them. The house is quiet in the warm way. "She's happy here," he says, looking toward the living room. "She's happy everywhere," Alice says. "Not everywhere," he says. He looks at Alice. "Here specifically." She talks about this house like it belongs to her. "She gave herself a key," Alice says. "In her mind, I think it does." Min Jun looks at her steadily. "Is that okay?" he asks. Honestly, Alice thinks about it. A year ago, the answer would have been different. "Yes," she says. And then, quieter, "It's more than okay." He holds her gaze for a moment and then looks at his tea. The small smile. The one that doesn't come often and means the most when it does. She has been noticing it for weeks before anything happens. The way Hana sits a little more carefully than before. The way she puts her book down after an hour and rests her head on the back of the bench with her eyes closed in the thin October sun. The shadow under her eyes that wasn't there in summer. The tiredness that doesn't look like the tiredness of a child who has been running around. It looks heavier than that. Deeper. "You've been tired a lot lately," Alice says one afternoon. Casually. "Watching." "I know," Hana says. Min Jun says, "I'm just having a hard few weeks." Alice looks at her. "And what do you say?" Hana thinks about it. "I say I'm okay," she says. "I just get tired faster than before." "Does anything hurt?" Alice asks. "Sometimes my legs," Hana says. Very matter of fact. "But it goes away." Alice files it. She watches. She says nothing more. And then one afternoon in late October it happens. The three of them are in the garden. Alice on the bench with her phone reviewing site plans. Min Jun tending the last roses of the season. Hana on the garden path pulling up small weeds with focused determination because she has decided this is her job now. The afternoon is cool and golden and entirely ordinary. And then Hana goes quiet. Alice looks up because that specific silence is wrong. Hana does not go quiet. And she sees it. Hana swaying slightly on the path, her face gone the color of paper, her small body already beginning to fold. "Hana." Alice is off the bench before she finishes the name. But Min Jun is already there. He drops to his knees and catches Hana before she hits the ground. And he has her in his arms, and his voice is low and urgent, but his hands are steady. Completely steady. The steadiness of someone who has been bracing for something like this. Alice sees it. She calls the ambulance. "She's breathing," he says. "She's breathing." "I know," Alice says. She crouches beside them on the path and puts her hand on Hana's face and talks to her, low and steady, the kind of voice you hold on to. Hana's eyes flutter open just before the ambulance arrives. "Alice," she says. Very small. "Right here," Alice says. "I'm right here." "You're okay." "I feel funny," Hana says. "I know. We're going to fix that. I promise." The waiting room at Lurie Children's Hospital is clean and bright. Alice cannot sit down. She walks the length of it. Comes back. Walks it again. Min Jun is on a chair, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, staring at the floor. Still, but not the stillness of someone in shock. Something else. Something contained and heavy and already familiar with itself. Alice stops walking. She sits down beside him. "Min Jun," she says. He looks up. "When she started swaying," Alice says. Her voice is quiet. "You were already moving. Before I even stood up." She holds his gaze. "And your hands were steady the whole time." He says nothing. "She's been tired for weeks," Alice says. "Pale. Eating less. Every time I mentioned it, you said she was just having a hard few weeks." She pauses. "You already knew something was wrong with her." The waiting room hums quietly around them. He looks at his hands. "I took her to a doctor 2 months ago," he says. "When the tiredness didn't stop. They did blood tests. Referred us to a specialist." He pauses. "The specialist told me a month ago." Alice is very still. Told you what, she says. Leukemia, he says. Low. Plain. Like a word he has been carrying alone in his chest, and is only now setting down. She's had it since just after she turned 7. The specialist said it had been building for a while before we caught it. The word sits between them. Alice breathes in. Out. 1 month, she says. Yes. You've known for 1 month, and you said nothing. He doesn't reach for a justification. He just looks at her steadily. She's not your burden to carry, he says. Simply. Honestly. I didn't think it was my place to make her your problem. She is not a problem, Alice says. I know that. Then why? Because I handle things myself, he says. Quiet but firm. I always have. I wasn't looking for someone to share it with. I was just trying to get through it. A silence. Alice looks at him. How are you paying for treatment? She says. A pause. The gardening job, he says. And 2 others. I took on 3 jobs when she was diagnosed. Something moves through Alice's chest. She does not show it on her face. Let me help, she says. He looks at her. Not out of pity, she says, before he can speak. Don't. You know me well enough by now to know that's not what this is. She holds his gaze. I have resources. I have connections. The best pediatric oncologist in Chicago. I can make 1 call and Hana is in front of her by next week. That is not nothing. So let me. Alice. Min-jun. Her voice is calm and completely certain. You took on 3 jobs to pay for her treatment. You have been doing this alone for a long time. I am not asking you to stop being the person who takes care of her. She pauses. I'm asking you to let someone take care of you both. He looks at her for a long time. She waits. She has learned how to wait for him. Okay, he says finally. Quietly. Just that 1 word. She nods once. She reaches over and puts her hand over both of his. He looks at her hand. Then he turns one of his over and holds it. And they sit like that together in the waiting room until the doctor comes out and begins to speak. She makes 4 calls from the hospital car park that same evening. By the next morning, Hana has an appointment with Dr. Shin, the best pediatric oncologist in Chicago. Min-jun finds out from the receptionist who calls to confirm, and he stands in Alice's kitchen with his phone in his hand and looks at her across the counter. You didn't have to do that, he says. I know, she says. Alice. Min-jun. She looks at him. She is going to get the best possible care. That is the end of the conversation. He is quiet for a moment. Then he sets his phone down. Thank you, he says. Fuller than the last time he said it. Heavier. Like he is saying it about everything at once. Don't thank me, she says. Just make sure she eats something before the appointment tomorrow. He almost smiles. Japchae, he says. Whatever she wants, Alice says. Treatment starts in November. Some weeks are harder than others. Hana loses some of her hair by the end of the 1st month, and she examines herself in Alice's bathroom mirror with great seriousness, and then turns and asks if she can have a yellow headscarf because yellow is her best color. Alice buys her 7. On the harder days, Hana is at Alice's house because it is closer to the hospital and because Alice's kitchen has become the place where Hana feels most comfortable eating on the days when eating is difficult. Min-jun is there on those days. They have stopped pretending there is a reason he needs to leave. One evening, Alice is at the stove making plain rice, the only thing manageable today, and Min-jun comes to stand beside her. Not to do anything, just to be there. You don't have to stay every night, she says quietly. I know, he says. She looks at him. I want to be here, he says. Simply. Completely. She looks back at the pot. So do I, she says. Neither of them says anything after that. But the kitchen feels different. Like something has been named without being named. The storm comes in January on a night when the Chicago wind is already vicious. Hana is in the guest room. She has her own drawer there now, a yellow toothbrush in the bathroom, a small shelf above the bed for her books. She has been deeply tired today after a hard treatment week and fell asleep at 8. Min-jun is in the living room with a book he has not been reading. Alice is in her study when the thunder hits, so close it shakes the windows. She is already on her feet when she hears it. The sharp sound from down the hall. The particular sound of a child trying not to be afraid. She goes. Hana is sitting up in bed, duvet at her chin, eyes wide, a few tears on her face. Trying very hard to be composed. Not managing it. Hey, Alice says softly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. You didn't wake me. Scoot. Hana scoots. Alice sits on the edge of the bed. I know thunder is just clouds talking, Hana says. Min-jun told me. That's one way, Alice says. Is there another? The sky making room, Alice says. Everything building up until it has to release. And after that the air is clean. Another crack of thunder. Hana flinches and presses into Alice's side without meaning to. Alice puts her arm around the small shoulders. Hana exhales all at once, long and slow, and the tension leaves her body the way it leaves children when they finally feel safe. Alice, Hana says. Are you scared of anything? The rain is hitting the windows in long sheets now. Yes, Alice says. What? Alice looks at the rain on the glass. Being wrong about people, she says quietly. Trusting someone and finding out you were wrong about them. Hana is quiet for a moment. Did that happen to you? Yes. And now you don't trust people? I'm careful, Alice says. About who I let in. Hana thinks about this. She pulls the duvet a little higher. Min-jun used to be like that, she says. When I was very small, I remember he kept everything very tidy. Very in its place. Like if things stayed in their place, nothing could go wrong. She pauses. But then one day it was just different. Warmer. Like he decided something. She looks up at Alice. I don't know when he decided it. I just know that one day the door was open and it never closed again. Alice does not say anything. I think, Hana says carefully, with the gravity of someone delivering something important, that you have to let one person be wrong and it hurts, and then you let one person be right, and that helps. And then maybe another one after that. She looks up at Alice. You have to start somewhere, though. Alice looks at this child. Sick and tired and entirely undimmed. You're going to be okay, Hana, Alice says. In every possible way she means it. I know, Hana says simply. You and Min-jun keep saying it. That's two people. That's enough to believe. She falls asleep 20 minutes later. Alice sits with her until her breathing evens out and the storm softens to rain. Then she gets up quietly and goes to the door. Min-jun is in the hallway, standing just outside the guest room, still and quiet, his face completely open. He heard Hana. He heard all of it. They look at each other in the dim hallway. The storm going soft outside. The house warm around them. She's asleep, Alice says. I know, he says. His voice is low. I heard. A pause. He takes one step toward her. He reaches out and tucks a loose curl back from her face. His hand warm and careful against her cheek for a moment. Just that. Then his hand drops. Stay, she says quietly. The other guest room. You shouldn't drive in this. He looks at her for a moment. Okay, he says. She goes to her room. She lies in the dark and listens to the storm finish and thinks about open doors. About the specific cost of walking through them and the specific thing you get back when you do. She has known for a while. She is done pretending otherwise. By February, Hana's numbers are better. Not perfect, not finished, but better, Dr. Shin's word, said with a careful warmth that Alice has learned to read. Responding. The word that matters most right now is responding. Hana comes to the garden on the first Thursday in February when there is still snow on the ground, and she stands in the middle of it looking at the sleeping beds with her hands in her coat pockets. Will the sunflowers come back? She asks. Min-jun is beside her. Yes, he says. How do you know? Because they always do, he says. They go down in winter, but the root is still there. Waiting. Hana looks at him. Then she looks at Alice, who has come outside and is standing a few feet behind them. Like people, Hana says. Neither of the adults says anything. Hana nods to herself, apparently satisfied, and goes inside to get warm. Min-jun and Alice stand in the winter garden. The snow is thin and the Chicago cold is sharp, and their breath comes out in small clouds. She's going to be okay, Alice says. I know, he says. And then he turns and looks at her, and she is already looking at him, and they are standing very close together without having moved, and his expression is the most unguarded she has ever seen it. Alice, he says. I know, she says quietly. I don't want to. Min-jun. She looks at him. I've had the door open for months. You know that. He looks at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he reaches out and tucks a loose curl back from her face. Just that. His hand warm against her cold cheek for a second before it drops. It is such a small thing. It rearranges everything. After Hana's next appointment, he says, when we know more. I want to, he stops. Exhales. I want to do this properly. Whatever this is. Properly. Okay, she says. They stand in the snow a moment longer. Then she goes inside to put the kettle on. He follows. Spring comes back to the garden the way he said it would. The sunflowers come up first. Then the roses. Then everything else, slow and certain and completely sure of itself, the way living things are when their roots went deep enough to survive a winter. Hana is in the garden the morning the first sunflower opens. Dr. Shin used the word remission 1 week ago, and Alice had excused herself to the hospital bathroom and stood with her hands against the cool tile and just breathed for 5 full minutes. She was not prepared for what that word would do to her. Now she is standing at the back door, watching Hana walk slowly toward the sunflower with her yellow headscarf bright in the April morning, her face tipped up exactly the way it was on the very first morning Alice ever saw her through this kitchen window. Same wonder, same open face, the same girl. More of her now somehow. More present. More here. Minjun comes to stand beside Alice at the door, their shoulders close. She asked me last night if the sunflowers would remember her, he says quietly. Alice looks at him. I told her of course they would, he says. She was there when they first opened. They knew her before they knew anything else. Alice looks back at Hana in the garden. Minjun, she says. Thank you for bringing her here that first day. He looks at her. You told me it was unacceptable. It was, she says. It was also the best thing that ever happened in this garden. He is quiet for a moment. In this whole house, he says. Hana turns around from her sunflower. She looks at the two of them standing together at the back door, and her whole face does the thing, big and bright and completely uncontained. I knew it, she announces. You knew nothing, Minjun says. I knew everything, she says. I knew in September, when you kept making extra kimbap. That was for Alice. I know, Hana says, deeply satisfied. That's exactly what I mean. Alice laughs, warm and real and full, the kind that lives in someone who has finally, after a long time, put down something very heavy. Minjun is smiling. The full unguarded smile that she has now decided is entirely hers. Japchae, Hana says with authority, already heading for the back door. We celebrate with Japchae. Minjun, come. It's 8 in the morning, he says. Japchae is for any time, Hana says firmly. Alice, tell him. She's completely right, Alice says. He shakes his head. He follows Hana inside. Alice stays in the garden for one more moment. She looks at the sunflowers. She looks at the roses coming in along the east wall. She looks at this garden that a little girl once stood in with her face tipped up like it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. And she thinks about all the walls she built and all the reasons she built them and how a 7-year-old in a yellow dress walked through every single one of them without even trying. She goes inside. The kitchen smells like sesame oil and the morning is warm and Hana is already narrating the japchae process in full and confident detail from her stool, while Minjun listens with his quiet, patient attention. Alice sits at the counter and wraps both hands around her coffee and watches them both. She kept herself safe for a long time, and she was right to. And then the gate beeped at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning in April, and everything she had sealed so carefully started, slowly, quietly, to open. The door is open. She is not closing it again. And if any part of this story felt familiar, if you have ever loved someone who used that love against you and decided the safest thing was to feel nothing, Alice wants you to know that the right people don't ask you to lower your walls. They just sit quietly beside you until you forget why you built them. Like this video, share it with someone who needs that reminder, and subscribe to Afro-Soul Stories. We'll see you next time.